Welcome everybody. My name is Kit. I'm the organizer of Back to Full Stack, and welcome to Cost Automotive. And today we have Joey right here talking about how we can be a successful junior engineer and how actually other senior engineers can help, the more junior engineers to be more successful. Joey is a software developer here at Cost Auto also. Please welcome Joey.
So let's get started. It's all downhill from the pizza, I promise you. First off, I just want to thank all of you for taking the time to be here. I signed up for this about 6 months ago, and I've been looking forward to it all year, so really excited to share what I have for you today. So about half of you, it looks like, know who I am. The other half are wondering who I am. The bad news is I'm still trying to figure that out myself. But what I do know is what he said. I'm a software engineer from Mannheim here at Cox Automotive. I started back in January, so I'm almost at the end of my first year. I graduated from Georgia Tech with a bachelor's in computer engineering last December, and I had 2 summer internships. The first one was at Caterpillar's World R&D Center in Mossville, Illinois, so a big company experience, and then at a Air Force defense contractor in Nashville, Tennessee, which was a company of about 20 people. So drastically different cultures and experiences, which was great. I'm also a huge nerd. I'm a huge psychology and neuroscience nerd. I started studying this stuff, cognitive science, about 2 years ago. And the reason why I initially started studying it is because I felt if I could understand myself better and the way that the mind works, and I could come up with better strategies for how to improve myself. As I learned, I started realizing that I could take the things that I've learned and share that information with other people. And so that's why I started doing, you saw the other logo under my name was Improvement Geek. That's kind of the brand that I go by, other than Joey Dowdy, my alter ego. And I do things like upload YouTube videos about that kind of thing, speak at events like this, and help mentor college students and other engineers. So I want to get started off today by sharing with you 5 ways that other junior developers like myself can succeed. The first is overcoming imposter syndrome. This is honestly the really big one. Now, by show of hands, or pizza, how many of you feel like you have a pretty good idea of what imposter syndrome is? Okay, that's actually impressive. So most people that I've talked to, especially here, don't know what it is. It's a psychological concept that was first really given a name in the late 1970s. And one of the first papers that ever really talked about it, the imposter phenomenon, from 1978, said it's an internal experience of intellectual phoniness that's commonly experienced by people that are successful or in a high place. A paper that came out in 2011 estimated that 70% of us will experience imposter syndrome at some point in their lives. But it's particularly common in software engineering, and that's because when you're a programmer, you're naturally surrounded by really intelligent people. The problem with that is that when you're surrounded by so many smart people, then it makes you feel dumb by comparison because we all compare ourselves to other people. But the thing is that it's not a matter of intelligence, it's about experience and knowledge. And if you put in the time like other people have, the people that you compare yourself to get that knowledge, then you'll be awesome too. So how do you overcome imposter syndrome? First off, don't fake it till you make it. I'm definitely not a fan of this saying, especially in this context. You shouldn't fake anything. You shouldn't sit in a meeting where you don't know what's going on, like I was in my first couple weeks here, and just nod your head and smile and wave and act like you know what Aurora and EMR and all this other jargon is. Ask questions. Ask the dumb questions. You probably heard it before, but if you're wondering something, there's probably other people that are wondering that as well, but don't want to ask. No one expects you to know everything. There's just too much, especially as a junior. You're going to have questions. You need to ask those questions. And it can be really overwhelming sometimes. You may be hired for a job as a JavaScript developer, a full stack developer, but that doesn't mean that you're going to be writing JavaScript and doing React stuff and AWS stuff all day. There's so much more to the job, and it can be really overwhelming, but it just takes time to learn it. Second is to take care of yourself. I'm a strong believer that to be an effective programmer, to be an effective anything else in life really, we have to take care of ourselves. And when you're in college, when you're an engineer, when you're anything really, you put so much other stuff first that it's hard to remember to take care of yourself as well. Important note is that Red Bull and Doritos are not in fact a food group, and you shouldn't drink coffee all day long. There is other things you can eat. It's really important to find ways that don't involve Red Bull and Doritos to prevent yourself from getting overwhelmed. Being overwhelmed is something that I've done a lot of research on lately. So basically what happens, I'm sure a lot of you are feeling overwhelmed as we head into Q4 and the holiday season, reasons here at work, reasons outside work, what have you. Essentially what happens is when you have too much on your mind, too many different things to think about, then your stress levels rise. Your cortisol rises. Your cortisol causes your serotonin, the neurotransmitter that makes you feel safe and happy, decrease. When that happens, your anxiety rises. And that also stimulates the amygdala in your brain's limbic system, the lizard brain, it's sometimes called, that's responsible for you being afraid of things. And then what happens is you then start being afraid and you start disliking the things that's causing that stress. So if you remember from college where you really needed to study for a homework or an exam or something like that, but you just couldn't bring yourself to do it, even though you wanted to, that's why. And that quickly leads into just inherently, subconsciously hating your job, hating your coworkers, because your dumb lizard brain sees that those things are bringing you stress. So how do you stop that? The very first step, as with many things, is awareness. You need to keep track of all the different things that are on your mind. Use calendar, use notes. I'm kind of old school. I like keeping pen and paper, pencil and paper notes. Not really a fan of Evernote and Google Calendar. Prioritize, divide, and conquer. Prioritize all the things that you have on your plate that you need to do. Figure out the ones that you're actually going to tackle and break them down if possible. Don't make a goal of saying you're going to do this big thing, period. Break it up into smaller sub-goals and sub-tasks, and then it'll seem a lot more manageable to your brain and you won't be as overwhelmed. And lastly, ask for help if needed. In my experience, almost all the people here at Cox Automotive, and generally in programming, are pretty awesome. They're happy to help as long as you just take the time to ask. They can't read minds. They may be smart, but they can't read minds. Another issue about taking care of yourself is sleep deprivation, and it's probably the biggest one on this list. Sleep deprivation causes numerous physical issues, including fatigue, but keeping this on track, it reduces your ability to take in and retain information. So that hurts your ability to learn assembly or MATLAB or JavaScript or whatever the kids are using nowadays. Now, the important thing that not a lot of people know is that you actually need a full night's sleep and not just a few hours. A few hours at the start of the night or at the end of the night aren't good enough. The reason why is that I'm sure a lot of you have heard that you have 90-minute sleep cycles. Those sleep cycles are split up into REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep, and NREM, non-REM sleep. Those two cycles of sleep have different functions. The non-REM sleep is most important in this context because that helps you learn things that aren't unconscious. So REM sleep helps you learn things like sports and things like that, games. But non-REM sleep is needed for learning programming or learning other things. So it's important to get to bed early and not stay up all night. So to prevent sleep deprivation, make time for at least 7 hours of sleep. That doesn't mean have your schedule and say, I'm going to sleep from 10 till 5. You're not going to get to bed immediately. You're not going to get out of bed immediately. It doesn't work that way. So make time for 7 hours of sleep. Sure, you've all heard this before. Don't have your phone in bed. The reason why is that blue light prevents the generation of melatonin, which is a neurotransmitter that makes you sleepy and want to go to sleep. If you sit there on your phone scrolling through Reddit for an hour, you're not going to get very good sleep. And lastly, an interesting fact that has actually made a huge difference for me is keep your bedroom cool and comfortable between the range of 60 and 67 degrees Fahrenheit. And that number comes from the National Sleep Foundation. May sound silly and wildly off topic for a programming talk, but that was the one thing that I've changed over the past 3 months or so that has really made a big difference for me. Number 3, protect your time. You don't have to go to every meeting. It's hard. We all want to learn all the things. You don't have to be this one. Oh, thanks. You don't even have to be at this one, but you are. So I had an issue when I first started here where I wanted to learn everything. I wanted to know what all the different acronyms and abbreviations meant. So I went to absolutely every meeting. That takes a lot of time. Not everybody on your team is necessary for every meeting. So if you start breaking yourself away, then you'll have more time to do stuff. Also, take some you time when needed. It's important to take breaks periodically. My favorite place to take a break is actually right outside, right out front by the big fountain. Not for very much longer because I hate the cold, but I'll enjoy it while it lasts. But it's good to just step away and go do something and just give yourself a break for a while. Also, avoid distractions like a plague because they actually are. So all of the social media notifications, most of your emails when something at AWS is on fire, Slack messages a lot of the times unless it's Pokemon Go. It's all distracting, and that's a problem because we aren't actually computers as much as we like to think we are. We absolutely cannot multitask. That is not a thing that we do, even though we may think that we can. So don't text and drive, kids. Studies have shown that it can take around 15 minutes to return to our previous levels of productivity when we get distracted. So if you get your phone buzzes and you look at it, and you look at your phone for like 5 minutes, it's going to take you about 15 minutes on average to get back to being as productive as you were. So between meetings, emails, Slack, and so on, it may not feel like you really get to do any actual hands-on keyboard programming some days, a lot of days. A lot of us do our best work when we're remote, honestly, and the only thing I have to deal with is my cat laying on my keyboard. Some of you may have heard of flow state. Flow state is essentially when you're in that productive, focused flow of things and you're getting good work done. So to help with that, if you work in an open environment like a lot of us do here at this building, then invest in some good noise-canceling headphones and listen to instrumental music. Try not to listen to music with vocals because hearing words distracts your brain from other forms of word processing. So it distracts you from reading, it distracts you from writing code and that kind of thing. Sometimes when I have something really important to do, I'll do that and I'll just close Outlook, Slack, and shut off my phone for a while. If there's something I really need to crank out and get done with only a couple hours, then I'll just completely eliminate all distractions. Sometimes I'll even get up from my desk and go somewhere else with my laptop. Technique you can use that I've started trying out, it's actually been pretty useful for me, is called the Pomodoro technique. It's a fancy name for basically saying you're going to take a set amount of time, focus on nothing else but what you want to do for that time, and then take a break and alternate. Number 4, challenge yourself. Never stop learning new things. There is so much to know in programming, psychology, cognitive science. There's so much to learn. And it's almost never a bad thing to learn new things. Like, knowledge is cool. Don't be the I hate this so I won't learn person. A lot of us joke about the fact that, oh, I hate CSS, I hate JavaScript, I hate React, I hate assembly for some reason. I hate BASIC and I don't want to learn it. But if you don't know how to do it, you're going to be reliant upon other people to do it. That naturally involves time, communication, other factors. So it's better, I prefer to just have a general idea of how to do basically everything. And that way I don't have to beg somebody to help me whenever I need a bit of padding change or something like that. Be T-shaped. That's something that's gotten thrown around our industry a lot over the past several years. Essentially that means being really deep on something, but having, again, a general understanding of a lot of different things. That's really powerful. You can also try using the Feynman technique to learn faster. And some of you may know Richard Feynman. He's one of my favorite figures in the science field. The Feynman technique is essentially explaining something to a layperson, or your cat, or an inanimate object, like a cat. And then as you're explaining it, the act of actually talking about something, like I am right now, for example, forces you to think about things in a different way. It forces different combinations of neural pathways to fire. And that helps you recognize gaps in your understanding that you wouldn't have been aware of before. If you remember taking an exam before and feeling like, oh yeah, I got this, like I know everything, it's going to be awesome. And then you go take the exam and it's not awesome. Well, you had gaps in your understanding that you didn't know about. And then after you do that, iterate over this repeatedly until you feel like you really have a good grasp of it. But sometimes your target may not be interested and they'll sit on your laptop. That is not my work laptop, for those who may be wondering. Mindset matters. One of the first books that I read surrounding cognitive science was Mindset by Dr. Carol Dweck. Highly recommend it for anybody, especially junior developers. In that book, she talks about having a fixed mindset, which is essentially, I'm stupid, I can't do this, I can't learn this. We have all heard countless people say, I hate math, I can never learn math. That's a fixed mindset. That's just not true. Unless you believe it's true, and then it is true. It's better to have a growth mindset, which basically says, I don't know that yet, but I can learn it. I can do it eventually with enough time and work. It may take some people more work than others, but you'll get there eventually. So I've read a massive amount of books over the past 2 years. I've read, I think, around 100 books on psychology and neuroscience, basically about one per week. I usually have 2 or 3 going between paper, audio, and PDF. So I've got a few that I want to recommend today. My absolute favorite book of all time that came out early this year is Atomic Habits by James Clear. As I've learned, I'm realizing that human behavior is mostly patterns. A lot of the things that we do are patterns. So this book tells you how to change atomic habits, meaning change the little tiny one-by-one Lego pieces of the habits that you have. Very powerful. I recommend this book to absolutely anyone that wants to change anything about themselves. Number 2, Why We Sleep by Dr. Matthew Walker. This book should scare you into getting more sleep at night, because it definitely did for me. Not getting sleep is absolutely devastating, physically, mentally, emotionally, all the things. Number 3, as I mentioned, mindset. Highly recommend for anybody that's still in school, anybody that wants to learn something new, maybe somebody that feels like they've had a fixed mindset and a lot of negative self-talk. This book will help change that, and it's got a lot of great research on it. She's one of my favorite researchers in the cognitive science field. Getting a little more on topic, number 4, clean code. Please don't make whoever has to read your code hate themselves. One of the major things that I've tried to bring to my team and kind of other teams around has been keep your code as readable as possible. If I, with about 6 months of JavaScript and React experience, can't understand what it is you're even attempting to do with your code, maybe you shouldn't have made it quite that efficient. Because a lot of the people don't seem to remember what they wrote like 6 months beforehand anyway. So Clean Code is an amazing book to help you be mindful of making your code clean and effective. And lastly, the classic, every programmer should read this book. I need to go back and read it myself because it's been a few years. This is an incredible book, highly recommend it. They just came out with this beautiful, I believe hard copy, 20th anniversary edition. So number 4, back on track, challenge yourself. I try to challenge myself constantly. That's one of the reasons why I signed up to give this talk today, to keep pushing myself and doing new things. So find meetups like this one, find groups, find online communities. I'm involved in several different online communities for programmers, and it's really great to hear about new things coming out in the industry, meet new people, and just learn new skills. Try new things like giving presentations like this one. This group, this meetup is a great way to do that. I'm also the Vice President of PR for Toastmasters, the one over at Summit. So since I'm PR, I have to give it a shout out. But Toastmasters is great, despite what you may have heard, because it really gives you a safe space to practice speaking and learn how to be a better presenter in a very small room setting, much smaller than this. And check out local conferences and conventions. One of the most exciting things that I've done all year has been going to the AWS Summit that was over at the Georgia World Congress Center. Whether you like AWS or not, it's really cool to go to stuff like that sometimes because feeling the excitement of most of the people that were there about programming and about the stuff that they were there to learn about was really cool. And it was reinvigorating to me to see all these people that were so excited about what we do. Number 5, actually the most important one on this list, is communicate. None of us work in isolation. Even if you're remote, even if you're in another country, in another universe, you're not actually in isolation. If you are in another universe, we need to talk. Take time to get to know the people on and off your team. Some of the greatest people that I've met in this company and have been the most helpful to me have been people that are in another building, but have been introduced to me or somehow our paths cross and I formed a connection with them and they've turned out to be really awesome. Everyone has something useful to teach. That includes you, but everyone has something useful to teach. So Go at communication with other people with an open mind and look for what you can learn from other people. Assemble what I like to call a goon squad that has your back. There's a few people here that I have on Slack speed dial anytime I run into a problem, and I do so often because I'm still relatively new. But it's really cool to have those people at your back because when you get stuck, they're there to help you. And give back when you can. Like, let those people know that you're willing to help them when they need something. And what's cool is that having people like that you can rely on means that I never have to worry about picking up a card because I have all sorts of different people that I can ask for help. So, yeah. Build your personal brand through communication. This is something that's getting kind of thrown around a lot. It's the trendy new term for this year, apparently, not just in marketing where it originated from, but just in general. It's all about building your brand. Don't take it too far. Please still be authentic. That means be yourself. Don't be fake authentic. Actually be you. Make sure that when your name comes up, people know who you are in a good way. Don't give people a reason to talk bad about you. So I mentioned that communication is the most important thing. I heard a couple stickers out there because people know where this is going. This is something I like to call the programming pyramid. The reason why it's a pyramid is A, because I believe communication is the foundation for everything that we do as engineers, and 2, because this really cool graphic happened to be in the slide deck from the start, so I made use of it. So it's now called the programming pyramid. As I said, the first foundation, the first layer of the pyramid cake is communication. Second is the architecture. Once you have good communication, you can start discussing how, from a high-level perspective, how you're going to solve the problem, and then start drilling down further into it. You have to have good communication, you have to have good rapport with your teammates to be able to do that, and then finally, you can actually sit down at your desk and code stuff. So now I'd like to switch gears a bit and talk about 5 ways that teams can help their new junior developers succeed. Before I move on though, I had somebody ask me as I was planning this presentation about people that are not necessarily straight out of college, meaning that they're a bit older and are just picking up programming for the first time. They're looking to switch gears and get into that industry. Basically everything I just said still applies, so if that fits you or someone that you know, all of that advice is still helpful for them. So, number 1, still communicate. Communication is a two-way street. You need to be able to communicate with your junior developer and make sure that they're doing okay and that they're not drowning. Check in frequently, but don't micromanage. It's a fine balance. Everybody's different, but it's a fine balance between making sure that the person's okay and making them feel like you're micromanaging them and babysitting them. None of us want to feel like we're being babysat, but none of us want to feel like we're being abandoned. Realize junior is taking on a lot and needs some time to grow. Like I said before, it's really overwhelming starting out, especially when you're right out of school, because school does not, depending on the school and the computer science program, I guess, but school doesn't exactly prepare you very well for what you need to deal with as an engineer. So realize that they're taking on a lot and they just need some time to deal with all of it. And this goes back to the pyramid. Again, I cannot stress this enough how much I believe that communication, good communication, is the start of it all. If you disagree with this, come see me after class and tell me why. So be willing to listen to your junior developer's perspective. As I mentioned a minute ago, I'm trying to bring a different perspective to my team about code readability because that's something that's important to me. And just because you've always done something one way doesn't necessarily mean that it's the best. I'm not saying that you're wrong, but it's just good to listen to different opinions sometimes. And it's not what you say, it's how you say it. If someone doesn't like the person that's talking to them, then they're probably not going to agree with the idea, right or wrong. And that can be a really dangerous thing. So the problem with this is you've probably heard of defense mechanisms and the fight or flight reflex from the nervous system. We see a lion out on Peachtree Dunwoody and we either fight it and go box it or we run from it. If you're smart, you run from it, but I'm not going to judge you, you can do what you want. Mentally, with communication, the same exact thing happens. If someone says something to you that hits you the wrong way and makes you feel like you're being attacked or judged or something along those lines, you're going to get those same subconscious defense mechanisms. And just exactly like a real attack, your mind's going to go into fight or flight mode. If you go into fight mode, that means that you're going to be argumentative, you're going to be defensive. If you go into flight mode, then you're going to withdraw. You're going to give in, you're going to just hide from the discussion entirely. You can try to be a code wizard if you want. We all know the code wizard types. Just try to be a good one. Or you can be a chaotic good one if that's what you want to do, because that's way more fun. I think like 2 people got that reference. Speaking of number 2, maintain a good culture. Culture absolutely makes or breaks a workplace. Negativity is incredibly toxic. It is terrible for a culture. If you see that happening among your team, don't normalize it. Because again, it's toxic and it infects everything. It brings people down. Team pride and brand is a great thing to build. I had the joy of being hired on to join a brand new team. So I'm working to help build up the brand by creating like a logo for us and other silly stuff that no one cares about, but it makes me happy. Number 3, set great standards. That means documentation, processes, meeting structure, anything else that feels important to your team, make sure that you're keeping that at a high level. And hold your teammates to the same standards that you want your junior developer to have. Don't let somebody who's been there longer slack off and expect your junior to be awesome at it. And again, encourage a sense of team pride, because we should be proud of the work that we're doing and the people that we work with. Number 4, allow mistakes. Don't jump in to correct mistakes immediately. There was a lot of you were there at the Mannheim Tech Summit a while back. I believe the first presenter, a guy named Robbie Renschhaus. Yeah. He gave a very short presentation about his methodology of pairing with junior developers, and he made a really interesting point, is that when he pairs with them, he sees them going the wrong way, because as a more experienced developer, you start getting this instinct like you're going to crash, you're going to go off into the ditch, and you're going to waste time, you got to drag the car out. Well, he lets it happen, and he got a little bit of flack at the end of that presentation because somebody was like, what's the point of doing that? Like, why wouldn't you just correct it immediately? And that's because the training wheels have to come off at some point. Like, we as developers need to be allowed to make mistakes sometimes, because that's how we learn, not just in engineering, but in life in general. So just ride into the dead ends together, turn around the cul-de-sac, and you'll be fine. And number 5, foster mentorship. Another thing that I'm really happy with that my team has done for me is they've introduced me to other awesome people and let me build my network. And they've also encouraged me to go and approach new people on my own without having to be handheld down the office to go talk to people. And also encourage them eventually to start mentoring others. Again, a great way to learn something yourself is to start sharing the knowledge that you have. And again, be their chaotic good code wizard ally. So as I said, I have a YouTube channel. For those of you who are interested, you can check it out here. I upload videos every Saturday morning on that channel. It's youtube.com/Improvement Geek. And a lot of the stuff that I've talked about has been concepts that I've made videos about already. So if you go check that out, then it'll be a lot more in-depth and a lot more research. Last but not least, please feel free to grab my card up at the front on this front table, as well as this document that I made up that I called the Junior Developer Playbook. It's the first thing like this that I've ever made. Somehow looked kind of decent. But if you have a junior developer that you think could benefit from these high-level tips, then grab one of those and pass it on to them. And with that, I would like to open the floor to questions.